In the final hours of her life, Shannen Doherty put her signature on a legal document she believed would bring closure to one of the most painful chapters of her personal life. The actress, whose decades-long career made her a household name and whose public battle with cancer inspired millions, finalized a divorce settlement with her estranged husband, photographer Kurt Iswarienko, just one day before her death in July 2024. Now, months later, that agreement has become the center of an escalating legal fight, one that pits Doherty's estate against the man she once trusted most. At the heart of the dispute is a fundamental question: can a divorce settlement signed immediately before death still be enforced after one spouse is gone? And if so, which court has the authority to enforce it? Those questions are now before the Los Angeles Superior Court after Iswarienko formally challenged the settlement in filings dated January 14, 2025, nearly 2 months after Doherty's estate accused him of failing to comply with its terms. When Shannen Doherty married Kurt Iswarienko in 2011, their union was widely viewed as a second chance at happiness for the actress. After earlier marriages ended in divorce, Doherty appeared to have found stability with Iswarienko, a successful commercial and fashion photographer known for his work with major entertainment publications. For more than a decade, the couple presented a united front. They attended industry events together, spoke publicly about their bond, and navigated Doherty's health challenges side by side as she battled breast cancer that later metastasized to her brain. Behind the scenes, however, the marriage was fracturing. In 2023, Doherty quietly filed for divorce after 11 years of marriage. At the time, her representative said the decision was not made lightly, emphasizing that divorce was the last thing Shannen wanted, but that she felt she had no alternative. As the divorce progressed, Doherty's health continued to decline, adding urgency and emotional weight to every legal decision. According to court records, the divorce settlement was signed by Doherty on July 12, 2024. Iswarienko signed the following day. Doherty died shortly thereafter on July 13, following a years-long battle with cancer. The timing alone has made the agreement extraordinary. Legal experts note that while divorce proceedings typically terminate upon the death of a spouse, a fully executed settlement agreement can still survive, particularly when it has already been signed by both parties. In those cases, the agreement may function similarly to a contract, enforceable by the deceased party's estate. That is precisely the position taken by Doherty's legal team and the trustee overseeing her family trust. In November 2024, attorneys representing Doherty's estate filed court documents asserting that Iswarienko had failed to meet multiple obligations outlined in the settlement. The filing, submitted by Christopher Cortazzo, trustee of the Shannen Doherty Family Trust, alleged both financial noncompliance and refusal to return personal property belonging to the late actress. Among the most significant claims, a Texas property valued at approximately $1.5 million was required to be sold, with net proceeds split evenly between Iswarienko and Doherty's estate. Iswarienko was obligated to list the property for sale but allegedly refused to do so. A Mooney M20 aircraft jointly owned by the couple was sold, triggering a buyout provision requiring Iswarienko to pay $100,000 to the estate. He allegedly withheld more than $50,000 from that payment. Personal items belonging to Doherty, including photographs, were not returned as required. The estate argued that these actions violated the clear and binding terms of the agreement. On January 14, 2025, Iswarienko responded with a forceful legal challenge. In documents obtained by the media, his attorney argued that the settlement itself should never have been enforced because it was filed in the wrong court. According to the motion, the Los Angeles Superior Court allegedly lacks jurisdiction to enforce the agreement. The filing goes further, asserting that the entire divorce action should have been terminated upon Doherty's death, rendering the settlement void or unenforceable. Iswarienko's position hinges on a legal principle that divorce cases generally abate when one party dies. His argument suggests that because Doherty passed away before all procedural steps were completed, the settlement should not survive her death. One of the most complex elements of the dispute involves jurisdiction, a technical but critical legal concept. Iswarienko's legal team claims the settlement was improperly filed and therefore cannot be enforced by the court currently overseeing the case. If a judge agrees, enforcement efforts by the estate could be delayed or derailed entirely. Doherty's estate, however, maintains that the agreement was validly executed, properly filed, and legally binding, regardless of Doherty's death. Legal analysts note that jurisdictional challenges are common in high-stakes estate and divorce disputes, particularly when assets span multiple states, as is the case here with property in Texas and proceedings in California. The Dripping Springs, Texas property has become a focal point of the conflict. Under the settlement, the home was to be listed for sale, with proceeds split evenly. The estate claims Iswarienko refused to list the property, effectively freezing a major asset. From the estate's perspective, this refusal deprives Doherty's beneficiaries of funds she explicitly intended them to receive. From Iswarienko's standpoint, the enforceability of that requirement depends entirely on whether the settlement itself remains valid. Until a judge rules, the property remains in legal limbo. Another contested issue involves a Mooney M20 aircraft once jointly owned by the couple. According to court filings, the settlement required Iswarienko to buy out Doherty's share for $100,000 within 5 business days of the plane's sale. The estate alleges that while the aircraft was sold in August 2024, Iswarienko withheld more than half of the required payment and has yet to deliver the remaining balance. Iswarienko has not publicly explained the alleged withholding, though his jurisdictional challenge suggests he disputes the obligation itself.
Beyond money and real estate, the estate also claims Iswarienko has failed to return personal belongings that held deep emotional significance for Doherty. Among them are photographs of the actress, items that cannot be replaced and carry value beyond any dollar figure. These claims underscore that the dispute is not merely financial. For Doherty's loved ones, the fight represents unfinished business and unresolved grief layered on top of legal complexity. In his January filing, Iswarienko also challenged the authority of Christopher Cortazzo to bring the enforcement motion in the first place. He argued that Cortazzo failed to adequately demonstrate his authority under the trust to act on behalf of Doherty's estate. This claim adds another layer to the litigation and could require the court to examine trust documents in detail. If successful, the argument could slow proceedings but would not necessarily invalidate the settlement itself.
Before her death, Doherty spoke openly about the breakdown of her marriage. In a December 2023 interview, she revealed that she discovered Iswarienko had allegedly carried on a multi-year affair, news she learned just before undergoing brain surgery. She later described the emotional devastation on her podcast, saying she felt profoundly unloved by someone she had devoted 14 years of her life to. Those statements, while not directly part of the legal case, provide important context for understanding why Doherty was determined to finalize the divorce before her death. Cases like this are rare but not unprecedented. When a spouse dies during divorce proceedings, courts must balance contract law, family law, and probate law, areas that do not always align neatly. If a settlement is signed before death, courts often treat it as enforceable, but procedural missteps, jurisdictional flaws, or unresolved filings can complicate enforcement. The outcome of this case could hinge on narrow legal interpretations with broad financial consequences. The court must now decide whether it has jurisdiction to enforce the settlement, whether the settlement survived Doherty's death, whether Iswarienko must comply with its financial and property provisions, whether the trustee has proper authority. Until those questions are resolved, the estate remains unable to fully close Doherty's affairs. Shannen Doherty spent her final years advocating for cancer awareness, reflecting on her life, and preparing for the inevitable with remarkable openness. That her final chapter is now dominated by court filings and legal disputes stands in stark contrast to the legacy she hoped to leave behind. For fans, the case is a sobering reminder that even carefully planned endings can unravel, and that legal battles often continue long after public goodbyes are said.